The Year the Easter Bunny Never Came by Marlene Campbell. I wonder how children today would react to Easter celebrations like those I experienced during my childhood. Even though they would probably think it was rather meager, I had no complaints. That is, until the year the Easter Bunny never came. I was born in 1928 in Arlington, a small rural community approximately 18 miles west of Summerside. My father, Gordon MacArthur, was a veteran of the Great War, who upon his return from the battlefields of Europe became a farmer, and my mother, Jessie, was a fine seamstress. My parents named me Glen, and I shared my childhood with my sister and only sibling, Jean, who was 3 years older. Though we were friends, she was far more girly than I ever was, so most of my time was spent playing with my cousin Edna, younger by 2 years. The small village of Tyne Valley, just 3 miles up the road from Arlington, was our usual urban center. But about once a year, my family would visit Summerside, considered to be the western capital of PEI. Just before Christmas, we would go to town on the morning train from Northam to deliver the plump Christmas geese and ducks Dad had raised over the summer and fall. We would come back on the evening train with Mum and Dad carrying a few small parcels wrapped in brown paper. By the time I was old enough to be aware of the celebration of Easter, the Great Depression of the 1930s was underway, and there was little cash to spare for any holiday other than Christmas. But a good effort was always put forth. As a child, I never remember going to church for the somber occasion of Good Friday. The distance to the Presbyterian Church in Birch Hill had to be covered on foot in the spring of the year because of the clay roads. Thus, it was easier to stay put on the farm and privately remember the Lord's sacrifice. I knew this story well, having learned it from sitting at my grandmother Cameron's side while she read to me from her picture Bible. Even though it was usually a day of routine rural life, I clearly remember the Good Friday that Edna and I were playing in the barn loft, when suddenly, in the mid-afternoon, it became as dark as night, and we had a hard time to find our way down the ladder, out of the barn and across the yard to the house, where Mother had to light the lamps to continue her sewing. Saturday evening could not arrive fast enough for me. With great anticipation, Jean and I would put out our Easter baskets before going to bed. Our Aunt Edith, who was unmarried and had a career as a nurse, had bought each of us a small blue Easter basket with a chick on the side, in which the Easter Bunny was to place his gifts. We treasured those colorful little baskets and carefully stored them from one Easter to the next. On Easter morning, we would usually find a few colored candy eggs in the baskets and perhaps even a small book. The Easter that I was 10 years old, I awoke to find nothing in the basket. I had been sick in bed with pneumonia, which was difficult enough in itself for an active outdoor girl, but to find not even a single Easter egg was truly devastating. I vividly remember looking into my empty basket and forming the words, "The damn old bunny never came." To this day, I have no idea if his failure to appear was a consequence of the Depression or if it was assumed that I had grown too old for the yearly visit. However, The Easter Bunny did make some visits in the coming years, perhaps to atone for the oversight. The special meals made Easter Sunday a memorable day. In the morning, we would have a breakfast of hard-boiled eggs, which my mother had dyed the colors associated with the holiday. Nestled in egg cups, the bright colors spoke of the fertility of the coming spring. Carefully, I would tap off the top and expose the creamy white and yellow yolk of the egg and sprinkle it with pepper and salt before digging in with my spoon. I loved to slather it onto my piece of homemade bread toasted on the rack held over the top of the kitchen range. Sweet tea washed it down. At noon, we would sit down to an Easter dinner that we truly savored, for it contained meat, which, during the Depression, was often missing from the dinner plate. My mother would kill one of her chickens and stuff it with bread dressing and roast it slowly in the wood range oven, while potatoes and vegetables fresh from the root cellar boiled in the pots on the top of the stove. Dessert was plum jam and large chunks of cheese cut from the big cheese wheel that Dad would purchase every fall from the Grand River Cheese Factory. It was a meal fit for a king, and our plates were always licked clean. Eggs were on the menu for supper, served in the form of custard, accompanied by homemade bread. We were certain to go to bed content, with our bellies full. My childhood Easters were simple in comparison to those experienced by my grandchildren. Commercialism has continued to creep in and has established a larger claim each passing year. The memories of my Easter Sundays from the 1930s are warmed by the innocence of youth, marred only by that particular year that the damn old bunny never came.